Hi, I'm Britton Jones. I'm the founder and CEO of Next Events Media Group and the proud producer of the Nest Summit, along with our partners FinTech TV and the Climate Group. I want to welcome you today to our session on advancing sustainability in events. And I'm joined today by a panel of three true leaders in the events industry. Carrie Freeman Parsons is the chair of Freeman, the world's largest events, brand experience and event services company. Stephen Carter, the group CEO of Informa, which among other business lines is the world's largest producer, organizer of events. And I'm here today with Alan Steele, the CEO of the Javits Center. In fact, we are in the Javits Broadcast Studio, which is a new service provided by the Javits Center, which is New York's convention center and one of the greenest venues in the US. I want to thank you all for being part of this session, which I want to mention is being sponsored by SISO, the Society of Independent Show Organizers, which is an organization near and dear to our hearts. Now we have just 40 minutes today and a lot of ground to cover, so I'd like to jump right in. And I'd like to start at the beginning. And all of you are not just leaders in the events industry, but you're true pioneers in the sustainability movement in the events industry. So what was the start? What was the impetus to move your sustainability efforts from the back burner to the front burner? And Stephen, let's begin with you, as Informa started on the sustainability fronts very early. I think I saw on your website that you issued your first corporate responsibility report in 2006.
We did. I mean, I've been in this company for just about a decade now, Britton, and I think over that 10-year period, sustainability and sustainable impact has become a mainstream business issue for all of us as individuals, as citizens, and certainly for all of us in business. And certainly if you're running a public company like ours, it's becoming an increasingly important criteria for investors. So that combination, really makes it a front and center question. I got involved in this personally. Actually, even before then, I did that thing which you have managed to avoid doing, which is I had a really good idea, but at the wrong time. All your good ideas, as far as I can observe, Britain, have been at the right time. But I invested personally in a small sustainability impact investing analytics business back in the 1990s called TrueCost, TruCost. And it taught me a lot. TrueCost had a basic idea, which was that the world would get to a point whereby we would buy products and services as a result of really understanding their true cost of production, not just the price on the till or the price on the sticker, but what was the true cost all the way through the supply chain and all the way to the end life of the product. And until we as consumers really fully understood the true cost of the products and services we were buying, we could never really run proper and efficient markets. That business eventually got sold and is now part of S&P, but it gave me an early lesson in the emerging thinking around sustainability, and I've carried that with me, and it's become a very big part of what we're trying to do here at Informa.
Great, thank you. And Carrie, what was the primary impetus for Freeman?
We had been asked by several clients what our position was going to be regarding sustainability. And I would say that we, for several years, really just responded to that. We had some team members who cared about sustainability, and we had some clients who cared about sustainability. And so we were responding. Where we really changed our mindset was about 5 years ago, when we decided we would become a design thinking organization. We really started thinking about if Freeman was going to be a privately held business for the next 90-something years, how were we going to ensure our sustainability? And so we produced a manifesto that really spoke to what we believe in and why we're in this business and what was going to compel us to continue to reinvent to go forward. And in the context of that, we started considering those decisions that we would need to make in order for us to be a sustainable business. And at that time, we had an opportunity to go over to Copenhagen and spend some time with architects and business leaders and designers who were embedding environmental sustainability into their projects from the onset, not just from a LEED green building perspective, but literally how are they improving the sustainability of their project, and from a design perspective. And that's when the light bulb really went on for us, that rather than looking at environmental sustainability as sort of an add-on imposition of something that we should do, incorporating it into our values of how are we going to be a sustainable organization going forward. So how are we going to consider reducing waste and reducing waste in all measures, wasted time, wasted materials, et cetera. And so once we started embedding that into our manifesto and into our values, that's when our team members really held the mirror up to us. And an example is we had a client, we have a client, McDonald's, we produce their event every other year, their worldwide event, and they were very focused on ensuring that their event was as sustainable as possible. And it was produced out of Orlando. A couple of weeks later, we were producing a more typical trade show, and we were kind of defaulting back to our old substrates and some of those things. And our people were saying, well, I thought we said that sustainability was going to be built into everything we do. So are we only going to do it when our specific customers are asking for it or not? And that was when we knew that the tide had turned, and it was going to be not a program at Freeman, but something that was going to be embedded into how we think about everything that we do.
And Alan, how did sustainability become one of the top priorities here at the Javits Center?
Well, I think when I walked into the building in 2012 and realized that we had the second largest green roof in the country, it struck me then that this could be a significant factor in our sustainability, not just in our sustainability programs, but in the sustainability of our business. We quickly became engaged with the New York City Audubon Society. We started to see bird life on the roof. We followed that with an investment in bees. We suddenly realized that not only was this good for our image with our customers, but it was also good for our employees. Suddenly there was another factor for them to feel good about when they were at the Javits Center. Since then, we've just taken that program and expanded it. I'm very lucky to have a strong team led by Ken Sanchez and Jackie Tran, who've developed a number of programs that will help us in the future, will help us save money, will help us save energy, will help us redirect food waste. So they're all important things for us, and certainly our customers are much more concerned about this now than they were when I came in 2012. I think just before that, however, my interest in sustainability was somewhat developed when living in England. I come from Newcastle, which is the place you don't take colds to, and we lived in a very grimy atmosphere. There were two Clean Air Acts in the UK, one in 1953, one in 1968, I believe. And over the course of the early 70s, we suddenly realized that there were hills and valleys and rivers out there that you could see from your window, which we'd never been able to see before. The atmosphere changed because of those Clean Air Acts. And so I think there was something embedded in me there that made me aware of the value of sustainability at all levels. When I came to Javits, I just had the opportunity to do something with it.
Great, thank you. Okay, now that we've established how we all got started, what are some of the major programs that you're working on today to improve the environmental impact of your business? And how are these initiatives transforming your businesses? And Carrie Freeman's been active in a number of climate initiatives. What are some of the major things and programs that you're working on today to advance sustainability?
Well, we're really breaking our work into three separate areas. So first of all is reduction. Just how do we reduce the materials that are required for events? And that really impacts in the planning stage. And frankly, in the last year or so in particular, our clients have been coming to us and saying, how do we reduce the cost of exhibiting? How do we reduce for exhibitors? How do we reduce our costs? And some of those discussions have been around what are the services and the products that we are providing for you for your event that really aren't adding value but are costing money, and in fact by reducing those, you'll reduce your expense, but you'll also reduce your environmental impact. So really focusing on the reduction of materials that are required for events and really thinking about that in the planning stages so that we're making good sound decisions with our clients. The second is in reuse. And again, past practice has been that we would produce new graphics every year for an event, throwing those things out in many cases. And so how are we thinking about our exhibit systems and our graphic materials and our products so that we can reuse them over and over? And then of course, recycling, and how do we use materials that are able to be recycled more effectively? And so in really focusing in those three areas, it's enabled us to consider with our clients on the front end in the planning stages of what decisions do we want to make on the front side so that we're really pulling all that through the organization on the backside. And then the kind of the final piece of it has been adding the measurement into our other ROI metrics for internal projects. So for instance, if we're making a capital investment into something, if we're deciding to leverage a supply chain for a certain function, if we're reducing our footprint in certain areas, and some of this has been accelerated as a result of our response to the COVID-19 crisis, we're also adding a measurement around environmental reduction and waste reduction and the impact of that. So I think it's causing us to go a little further than we might have otherwise, because we're realizing that we have an opportunity to make an even bigger impact in the long term when we add that sustainability lens into our decisions.
That's great. All really important programs. And Alan, we're here at the Javits Center under the largest green roof in New York, the second largest in the US, as you noticed. And it's really become an iconic symbol of sustainability in New York City. And please tell us more about becoming one of the greenest venues in the US and what you're doing to stay that way.
Well, I was really very lucky because I was not in any way responsible for the creation of the green roof. That was Bruce Fowle, the architect who led the renovation of the Javits Center, which ended in 2015. And Barbara Lampin, who headed up the development corporation at that time. They were the ones who made the decision to invest in that green roof. And it proved to be a huge incentive for us to begin all of our sustainability programs. As I mentioned before, the birds came first, the bees came second. After the bees came the honey. After that came our sustainability focus. And we've now taken this to a point where we have a team working on this on a daily basis. We're now looking at new programs, particularly with regard to solar. We are beginning the installation of what will be the largest solar power installation on the roof of Javits. It will not interfere with the green roof because it will be situated over the air conditioning units, but we will generate about 2.5 megawatts of electricity. We have a 2 megawatt battery storage unit built into our new transformer building. This will allow us to be independent of the grid should there ever be a need to do that. So it's both a sustainable practice, but it's also a business practice that will allow us to guarantee more continuity to our customers. It's also led us into doing more with the community. We have programs such as Javits Cares. We have another program where we support local school kids with their movement into college, because being sustainable is also about being acceptable to the communities in which we live. We're certainly seeing a demand from our customers, but we're expecting the same kind of demand from our neighbors. So we're looking to have that be an important part of our future. I think sustainability for us will only become more important because there is no doubt our customers are suddenly seeing this as something that their customers are expecting from them.
Very, very encouraging and very impressive. And Stephen, Informa has adopted a Faster Forward program and announced goals around net zero carbon and zero waste. Please tell us more about Faster Forward and how it's taking shape at Informa.
Thanks, Britton. Well, look, much like Carrie, we've created a program which you rightly described, the Faster Forward program, and it seeks to do a number of things over a specified time period. We've set ourselves a period of 5 years. We actually, as a company, achieved carbon neutrality last year. But we've said between now and 2025, we want to get to a point whereby we are net zero carbon and zero waste. We've done a lot of work in the delivery. We created for our, roughly 900 to 1,000 events in the days when we were allowed to host events. An event fundamentals program whereby we look at everything. We look at carbon reduction, waste, diversity, removal of single use. We've actually done a project with Carrie's team called the CBIG project on Sustainable Events Big Initiative, which is to try and work down through the supply chain because sparing Alan's blushes, Javits is at the cutting edge of this, but we operate everywhere in the world, and there are some parts of the world where there's a more homespun supply chain, particularly on booth production and on other materials. And so working with the entire supply chain is important. One of the other parts of Faster Forward is on the content side of our business, because half of our business is events, but the other half of our business is digital content. And in both the content we put in our events and in our digital content business, we're trying to make sustainable content and contribution to our customers and their industries a bigger part of where we add value, because ultimately our multiplier effect we have a big footprint in our advanced learning and publishing business and also in our business information and intelligence business. And then on the investor side, ESG investing, which isn't just about sustainability, there's also environment and governance, but a big part of it's about sustainability. We haven't set ourselves a target there that we would like, I don't know, pick a number, 25% of our register to be ESG investors, but we did set ourselves an objective, which is for any investor for whom a company, a publicly listed stock, would have to be a high quality ESG qualified investable stock. We did not want to be an obstacle to them making that investment. And thereby that would open up an access to capital that otherwise we would not get access to. So it also has a commercial benefit on the equity side of our business.
So let's take a step back and discuss the industry as a whole for a minute. How do you see the drive to move to a more environmentally balanced effort impacting the future of events? And let's take two cuts at this question. First, let's look at the impact on the composition and size of show floors. Alan, what do you see on that front?
Well, I think in the short term, we're obviously somewhat impacted by COVID-19, and that's having a significant disruptive effect on any plans that we might have. But I think in the long term, what from Javits' perspective is really important is to be able to measure and then manage the sustainability efforts, not just of the building, but also of our customers, to help them develop the programs that can make sure that they have the information to determine what sustainability plans they need to have. So we're looking now at how we can help people to measure, for instance, the amount of electricity they consume. Because right now the model here is that we include electricity in the rent we charge for the space. Perhaps from a sustainability perspective, a better program would be to have that be a separate charge, to take it out of the rent, have it be a separate charge, so that the organizer of an event would have an incentive in reducing the amount of electricity to be consumed. I think there are ideas like that are not in place, but that are being kicked around, that will work with our customers to resolve, and again, together find ways to have less impact. Right now we charge for waste that is developed on the basis of weight. So we already have a practice that does this. If we had a practice of charging for electricity on the basis of consumption, perhaps there is a real incentive in there for our customers, which they can potentially pass on to their customers. So there's a way we can all engage in this, and I think it's going to be an expectation for us when we do reopen.
Great. Stephen, what are your thoughts on this subject?
Look, I think our industry, like all industries, is going to face increasing scrutiny, and I think this is an area where scrutiny will be good. And Alan is absolutely right. A lot of that's got to do with transparency of pricing and cost, energy consumption, but also energy sourcing. We made a decision as a company in our offices everywhere in the world to move to green energy suppliers only as a means of contributing to our own carbon neutrality ambitions. As it relates to the exhibitions where we're working with venue partners like Javits and others, and I think this will probably be a sort of foster child of COVID-19 when it's over, I think there will be a shift on density. I think there will be a greater demand for pre-event screening, greater levels of digital pre-registration, more efficiency on meeting schedules, and both the efficacy of the meeting schedules, but also the quantity. I think the business will migrate more towards quality and buyer qualification and lead qualification than it will just absolute volumes. It was a great event. We had 100,000 people. How many times have we all either heard that or said it? It's not going to disappear as a metric, but it's going to become a less important metric. Carrie's already talked about materials and waste management more broadly. I think that's going to become, to go back to my true cost point, I think that will become an important part of the mix. And then you get into the question, which is very real to all of us right now. In fact, I think the last trip I did was when I saw Alan. So it was when I was in North America and the East Coast in January. Now I've got withdrawal symptoms because I can't go anywhere near an airplane. But when it comes back, I think there will be a reassessment about what journeys are necessary, what are discriminatory, and what are critical. And that will be an opportunity, I think, for the larger and more powerful event brands really to step up to the plate and be clear about the value that they're adding, and indeed the environmental benefit that they're creating by reducing the need to have multiple of other bilateral individual travel moments, because there's an inherent efficiency in the event product.
Great. And Carrie, how do you at Freeman view this impact on the size and composition of show floors?
I agree with what has been said, and frankly, if you step back and to say what is going to preserve the sustainability of events, it's that they're relevant to the marketers who attend as well as to the attendees, and that really focuses on making sure that the right people are attending, not that the maximum number of people are attending. And so we are pleased with the progress that we're making just through this COVID crisis of, as we're all going to be resizing and looking at events differently, and the financial metrics around how events generate value for the various constituents, all of that is going to have to be considered just by virtue of exactly what Stephen said. I think people are going to be more discriminate about what trips they choose to take, and companies are going to be considering what investments they want to make in order to market their product, et cetera. So our belief is that this is actually going to make events stronger. It's going to put more pressure on event organizers to ensure that they are providing value to the constituents that are involved. Digital is certainly going to expand the reach, but the live event is going to expand the depth. And that when those people are gathering, and Stephen had touched on it, it is a more efficient use of people's time when you have, dozens or hundreds of people making hundreds of connections in a short amount of time, as opposed to making individual trips. So, albeit painful, and I think still a lot of reckoning to be done as it relates to all the different financial metrics that we're all going to need to adjust to and work together. I do think it's going to lead to a more healthy place for the events industry overall.
Do you see a changing role between large and perhaps international events and more regional events, or how do you all feel about is there going to be a move? People can argue it either way, that there are going to be bigger events and the industry is going to come together in a more concentrated way, or that there may be a proliferation of smaller, more regional events. Any of you like to comment on that?
I don't know that there's one answer to that question. I think in the case of New York, because we have such a large demographic, then for us a local audience is not as big an issue as it might be in other locations. We can attract a very large and qualified audience within the tri-state area. So I think that for us that is potentially a benefit. It certainly, I think, with the addition of something like this virtual studio, can allow companies to think more about reaching an audience that they wouldn't expect to reach under normal circumstances. They would be able to get to an international audience in particular who perhaps wouldn't attend in as much, in as big a number as they will for a virtual event. And I also think that we have been very lucky. We have a very large outdoor space that's being built as part of our expansion. That space can accommodate right now about 1,500 people. That, I think, is going to be a bigger factor for many events. They're going to be looking to continue to have their social activities, but they need to have them in a way that's socially acceptable. And it will be a while, I think, before all of our customers get comfortable with being close to each other with or without a mask. Great.
And Stephen, do you see this? It's kind of dependent upon the individual industry and the demographics within each different industry sector that you serve?
Look, I'm a little bit with Alan. I think it certainly won't be a single answer, and right now I think it's very challenging in the eye of the COVID storm to really see how this is going to settle on the other side. I don't know what Carrie's view is, but we at the moment are effectively doing no major physical events anywhere in the world, apart from mainland China, where actually, we got a big show running in mainland China this week. Furniture China, we've got nearly 200,000 pre-registrations. So, wow. I think there will be a different return path for different sectors. I think there'll be a different return path for different geographies, for different cultures, for different communities. But I think one of the things that's going to be constant to all of them is Alan's point, that the way in which the show needs to work and the demands that people are going to put on the show are going to be different. We are literally running, like you are today, hundreds of these virtual events, and we're learning every day about what do people look for in a virtual event, in search, in discovery, in discoverability, in curation. And I think a bit like the going to work question, is everyone going to work from home forever, or is everyone going to return to a physical office? And I think the answer is no, there's going to be a hybrid. Are we going to never have any large gathering events again? No, we'll have many of those. But will there be learnings from the virtual events that will create hybrid products? Yes, there will.
Great. Carrie, do you have anything you want to add to this point?
The only addition I would make is if there is event consolidation, I think there were likely some events that were challenged before COVID. Whether or not they were due to competition or relevance or et cetera, and there might be an opportunity for some of those events to consolidate. And so we think that we'll see a little bit of that as well. But other than that, we completely agree. We think that there'll be more small and regional events, but we also think that the large events will be back. It's just going to be a matter of when and where. And, ultimately, I think from, again, a sustainability perspective, I think this is causing all of us to really consider our business and the value that we're bringing to our audiences and our clients, regardless of who those clients are, and ensuring that we're really delivering value and making the changes that we need to make in order to deliver value.
Great. Well, now I'd like to shift to a bigger picture question. And I think one of the things that we need to be mindful of as we move the events industry forward is the public perception of the events industry. According to a recent A.T. Kearney survey, nearly half of the consumers interviewed said that COVID has made them more concerned about the environment. And perhaps this can be a good thing. Perhaps it can serve as a catalyst to accelerate climate action. But I think there's little doubt that our attendee and exhibitor audiences will increasingly be environmentally aware and conscious. And I think you've all noted that this is already happening. And to the uninformed, it could seem harmful or irresponsible for an attendee to hop on a plane or drive a considerable distance to spend a few hours on a show floor or participate in a conference. And yet, as we've also talked about, there's tremendous efficiency, both from a time standpoint and an environmental perspective, in bringing an industry together to conduct its business. And I think there's some really important work being done on this front, and I'm wondering if any of you would like to comment on this. And I guess a bigger question is, how can we as an industry effectively educate our public-facing audiences about the vital role that events play? Carrie, would you like to go first?
Sure. I think what we have certainly realized through this pandemic is just the value of the live event industry is not recognized by certainly here in the United States, in Washington, D.C., or et cetera. And so as we think about the work that we've been doing with Go Live Together, it's really been to highlight the importance of the live events industry to economies, but also to various businesses, and been putting stories up there about small businesses that were able to incubate and then had a catalyst at an event to grow. And so I think certainly because of the economic impact, the good news is there is more realization of the value of the events and meetings industry overall to economies that I think is going to self-perpetuate. But I think it goes back to that comment that I made before, that if an event is not driving value for the constituents that are participating, if it isn't really the catalyst for building businesses or exchanging ideas or delivering education, then maybe the argument is right. Why are you getting on an airplane to do that? So, it continues to go back to this notion of ensuring that we are delivering events that are providing value and attracting the right audiences, and then also continuing to tell the story of what happens at these events and why they're so important to the economy, and why they're so important to small businesses that are trying to find new markets.
Great. Stephen, would you like to add your perspective on this issue?
Well, I think you're absolutely right to raise the question, Britton. I think these circumstances, I can't think of another shared global circumstance. Certainly in my lifetime, there have been specific geographical circumstances which have been either tragic or terrible that have echoed around the world. But a shared circumstance where nearly 70%, 75% of the world's population is in some form of lockdown, it's quite an extraordinary situation. I think it's very difficult, interesting, but difficult to project exactly what is the behavioral consequence of that on the other side. I take the view, and I don't want to be a metaphorical climate change denier, but I take the view that we're human beings, and that I'm enjoying this discussion and learning, and it's great to see you again and Alan again, and it's great to meet Carrie. But in my experience, digital sustains relationships, but it doesn't create. You need physical interaction. We're human beings. We've been traveling for millennia, and exploration and discovery and face-to-face. That's an eternal human truth. I don't see that going away anywhere soon. We want physical connection. And in business, it makes an enormous difference. I think there will be an absolute need for the industry to make sure it doesn't shoot itself in the foot on the basic things: waste, recycling, single-use products. We're just going to get to a point whereby, it's going to be a bit like smoking in a restaurant. People are just going to say, well, why are you doing that? So I think there's a basic level of responsibility which the industry needs to see, plan for. I think as it relates to dealing with the venues, it would be helpful if we could all agree a standard set of terms. Here's an ask that we all could sign up to, and I think that would make everybody's life easier and would be more rewarding for our customers and for our communities. But I do think, to go back to your attendance question and allied it with this question, I do think there will be a greater focus around what I would call the primary audience. Mm-hmm. I think the secondary and tertiary audiences that, to use your construct, used to, would jump on a plane or a taxi, I think there'll be less of that. And therefore the primary audience will come, but they'll be more demanding. And as Carrie says, that will speak to quality, to content, to curation, and that will improve the product. And ultimately, as we all know, the best products in any market are a function of demanding customers. So if our primary audience gets more demanding, the product will get better. If the product gets better, the industry will look better.
Very well said. Thank you. Alan, how about you?
Well, I'd agree with what was said. I mean, I think one of the advantages of this COVID-19 outbreak, if there is such a term I can apply to it, is that it has reinforced how important it is to have face-to-face communication. I think it's interesting, if you look at the kind of events that we have in the industry, to see fan-based events like Comic-Con, where there's a real hunger to come back to an event. But in other more traditional business-to-business events, there's much less of an appetite, partly because the corporations that send people to events are a little nervous about making them do something they may not want to do. So again, as we've talked about before, I think it varies significantly between industry. I do think that one thing we could have done better as an industry, and perhaps we should focus on this going forward, is separating the meetings, conventions, and trade show businesses from mass gatherings. I think that's been a very difficult thing to do, certainly in my experience of trying to explain what we do to my masters. The tendency is to put all of these things together, and I certainly don't want to put obstacles in the way of those who produce mass gatherings. But there is a difference. If you have a small, controlled audience at an event, you have a much better chance of maintaining the kind of protocols that we've all talked about implementing. If you have 100,000 people, that becomes much more challenging. I'd certainly be interested to see how Stephen's experience in China goes with 200,000 people in a venue. So, yeah, I think that we've all got to look at what we do. We've all got to look at transparency and how we do it. We've all got to look at maximizing the value of what we provide to our customers. And sustainability is a key part of that. I don't need to talk to my 14-year-old and my 16-year-old to understand how much this matters to them. And they are the buyers of the future. They and my grandchildren deserve something like this from our industry, and we will certainly do as much as we can to provide it.
What's next on the horizon to help the events industry improve its performance from a sustainability standpoint? Are there new partners that you see out there, new collaborations, new technologies? Stephen, would you like to address that?
Look, I think it's going to be a very exciting period once we start beginning to see the current circumstance get more under control in different parts of the world. I think it's been a learning lesson for us all. It's not one we would have wished for, but it's been a learning lesson for us all. We've learned new protocols, and I think we have found some new partners. Particularly, I mean, we have two types of event businesses. To the point that Alan made earlier, I mean, we are, I think, one of the largest trade show and exhibition organizers, but we're also, I think, the largest, conference and content small gathering organizer as well. And so we have been working with a lot of partners on new hosting capabilities, curation, data capture, search and discoverability, analytics of what people were interested in, matchmaking. So I think there are a lot of emerging partners in the digital space who will become much more integrated into the event experience as a function of what we've learned in COVID-19. So I think that definitely will be the case. I also sense, and I'm not just saying this because Alan is on the panel, my experience, and I hope the same is true of other colleagues, my experience is that this has in fact deepened the relationship between the organizers and the venue operators and the venue owners, because we have a shared challenge, and often shared challenges create deeper partnerships. Same with cities and states and countries, because all of us are going to want to bring the world back to New York or to Singapore or to London or to wherever the location is. And so I think it's going to deepen partnerships with partners in the business tourist industry, in the travel industry. I think the aviation industry will fast track the work that they were doing on cleaner flying and more efficient flying. So I think the ecosystem of the industry will accelerate a lot of innovation that might have taken longer. I'm not trying to be Panglossian about this situation. No one would have wished for it. But I think there will be good partnerships and deeper partnerships that come out of this that will make the end product better for all of our customers.
Wonderful. We're almost out of time, but Carrie, would you like to add anything to what's on the horizon?
I would echo the optimism around the changes that are happening, maybe certainly accelerated as a result of the pandemic. And in addition to the technology and the digital partners that Stephen mentioned, certainly touchless registration and different things, that different aspects of technology that are going to enable us to cut, I know as our company, cut paper way down, transportation way down, just several different things that are going to provide some opportunities. I think what is most encouraging to me, and Stephen used the term ecosystem, it is encouraging to see that the ecosystem is working together to solve this specific issue related to sustainability. And CBIG that was mentioned earlier is a great catalyst for that. The only way for us to make really considerable improvements is for there to be some level of consistency, so that show organizers know what to expect, venues know what to expect, exhibitors know what to expect, and contractors, those who provide services have a certain level of expectations. So I think we need to just continue to push the accelerator on that to make sure that we're making sustainable changes, changing the system as opposed to addressing the specific issues. And I'm encouraged that we're starting to make real progress there.
Great. And Alan, do you have a quick last word?
I would just say that I think we now have a situation where interests are aligned. Interests of the attendees, interests of the event organizers, interests of exhibitors, and interests of venues, interests of general contractors. Everyone is hearing and feeling the same thing, and they're reinforcing it to each other. So we should take this as an opportunity. This is when, as Carrie just said, we should put the accelerator down. Sustainability is here to stay. Any of us who are aware of climate change will recognize that. We have to be part of it if we're going to stay relevant in the marketplace of the future.
Well, great things will happen by working together, and I've so enjoyed working with you today. This has been a lot of fun. Carrie, thank you so much. Stephen and Alan, thank you for making the time to share your insights and wisdom on this most important subject moving forward. Thank you.